The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Well, major news to start the day. Really pretty big news here in Robert Mueller's Trump-Russia investigation, because we learned yesterday that former Trump chief strategist Steve Bannon, of Breitbart fame, of chief propagandist fame, of being one of Trump's clearly closest inner circle advisors fame, was not only subpoenaed by Robert Mueller's Russia investigation, he showed up to a House panel which also requested his presence and refused to answer a ton of questions that he was asked. This initially started last week. Last week, Stephen Bannon was subpoenaed, notified of this subpoena from the Robert Mueller investigation. Then he testified yesterday before a House panel. So let's first stop and talk about the grand jury piece with Robert Mueller's investigation. If you testify before a grand jury, and we've gone through this routine before, if a grand jury exists, it's because Robert Mueller believes that crimes may have been committed. And the point of the grand jury is to figure out whether particular charges should be brought based on the evidence that exists and on the testimony of grand jury witnesses. So that alone is a major revelation, because it's the first time that at least we're aware of that Robert Mueller is using a grand jury to subpoena someone from Trump's inner circle to get information from them. Yesterday, we also learned about this additional subpoena that exists from the House panel, and Stephen Bannon testified there yesterday. And yesterday, there were 10 hours of questions to Stephen Bannon behind closed doors with the House Intelligence Committee. Reports are that it became significantly argumentative, would be one way to say it, and that Bannon said over and over again that he simply couldn't answer many of the questions, or that he wouldn't answer many of the questions because of, again, executive privilege. And of course, there are immediately legal questions about that, because executive privilege is not necessarily Bannon's to assert, but there's legal disagreement about that. So I don't want to focus on that too much. But what this tells us about the nature of the questions from the House Intelligence Panel is that they're digging very deeply into direct Trump material. And right after these 10 hours of questioning yesterday, Democrats on the committee came out and said, we believe that the White House actually got to Steve Bannon to prevent him from talking about the topics that we were asking him and that we brought up. The good news, if you're the Trump administration, is that Bannon was nothing more than a coffee boy, basically an intern with no knowledge or access to anything important, right? Otherwise, this might really be bad and a concern for Trump. And we've seen that attempt to frame everybody, every single person who has either been indicted or become the focus of this investigation or has since been fired or resigned. They really had minor roles. Michael Flynn, well, yeah, I mean, he was national security advisor, but only for a few weeks, and then he was forced to resign. Sean Spicer, yeah, from day one as press secretary, he went out and told lie after lie after lie. But listen, it's just the press secretary after all. Papadopoulos, Trump barely even knew this guy. And of course, the picture came out of him at a meeting. And then Paul Manafort, he was like a nobody. He was tangentially involved with the campaign.
But that being said, I do get the sense that he's not directly implicated in the Russia scandal. He did join the Trump campaign in August of 2016, the last few months. But I also get the sense that if things Russia were being discussed in a meeting, say, he wouldn't get up and leave. I think he would want to hear the juicy details.
What you're saying is actually part of the analysis that some legal experts are putting out there, which is that you don't subpoena to a grand jury the target of an investigation. So what we can read a lot into this, right? We can read into this that these are signals from Mueller that Bannon is going to have to tell the truth and come clean, because you will go to jail, or at least risk going to jail, if you lie to the FBI or to investigators. But the other signal that comes from this relates to what Pat just said, which is that if Bannon were a target of this investigation, he would not be subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury in this way. and that's indicative, as the legal experts are saying, that Bannon is not a target of this investigation. And that doesn't surprise me, because you've said before that you actually don't think Bannon was wrapped up in this Russia stuff. I generally have no reason to believe so either. So that is definitely something that we can glean for this. If you're Bannon, what do? Right? On the one hand, I guess that you joined up with Trump maybe because you believed in his potential to change politics in the U.S. for the better or something. Maybe Bannon just joined up for personal gain, greed, self-aggrandizement. We don't know, but we know he's had a pseudo falling out with Trump. Trump says Bannon lost his mind when he left the White House. Kind of convenient timing, right? Because now Steve Bannon will have the opportunity to truly screw Trump over, depending on what he knows. And this would be like the epic power alpha move for Bannon, right? Trump slams Bannon publicly, and then Bannon goes to the grand jury, comes clean on everything, and he can actually say, listen, this is a grand jury. I'm not going to perjure myself and lie, but we know Trump does expect his loyal, subservient staffers to do that. We know that Michael Flynn was involved in lies. Jeff Sessions, as his attorney general, has been a lie machine. I actually think Trump does expect and demand that these people lie to cover him.
Yeah, or Bannon could even flip on Kushner, too. You remember Bannon and Kushner had that feud that went on and on for months in the White House. I mean, Kushner didn't like Bannon because of the Muslim ban. Bannon didn't like Kushner because he's a Jew, I guess, and a globalist.
Was that what? I thought it was more just that he thought he had no business being involved, which, by the way, Bannon was right that Kushner had no business being involved in an administration, but neither does Bannon. That's the funny thing. Last thought on this. Every time there's a big step forward in the Trump-Russia investigation, an indictment, a guilty plea, blockbuster documents, you get more people saying things like, you're still paying attention to this Russia nonsense. There's nothing there. When you hear that next time, and if you spend 30 seconds on YouTube today or on the internet, on internet news websites, you'll see it. Step back for a second and just think of the trajectory of this entire thing for the last 12 to 18 months. First, it was there's never going to be an investigation. Well, Comey's looking into it. He's not going to find anything. Well, Comey's been fired by Trump to stop the investigation. Mueller has been appointed special prosecutor. Nothing will come of that. Well, then you've got the Manafort indictment and the Papadopoulos indictment. Well, that's as far as it's going to go, and it has nothing to do with anything anybody did while working for Trump. Well, then you had the Michael Flynn indictment, who was Trump's national security advisor. Listen, he was a small player in the whole thing. It's completely meaningless. The investigation is going to be done by Christmas 2017 or New Year's Day 2018. And now the epitome of the inner circle member for the Trump team, Steve Bannon, is subpoenaed. Still nothing to see here. Clearly, it's going nowhere, right? Ignore those people. Allow this thing to run its course. And then there will be plenty of time to look back and Monday morning quarterback everything that happened. Okay, let's have some follow-up, if I may, on this Trump shithole story, which we are now saying because everybody's allowed to say it now that Trump said it.
How long can we say it for, though?
Years. Oh, yeah. I'm planning on, even if it's not in the context of this story, now I'm going to be saying the word for a very, very long time. So the backstory is Dick Durbin, Democratic senator, was in the room with Donald Trump, along with many other senators, when Donald Trump reportedly said that we don't want people coming to the U.S., immigrating to the U.S. from shithole countries. Instead, we want people coming to the U.S. from countries like Norway. Dick Durbin was one of the voices that said this is what Trump said in the room. Lindsey Graham hasn't commented, but he is quoted as during the meeting using the word in quoting Trump to say, I think that you're wrong about what you're saying about these shithole countries. However, Donald Trump pointed to, as I told you yesterday, a couple of Republican senators who said, we don't agree with Dick Durbin's story. Trump didn't say it. Trump just did not say shithole, or he said shit house, right? Those were the defenses from these two senators. Then, and I played this clip for you yesterday, Donald Trump referenced those two senators as proof he didn't do it. Take a listen.
Security at the border. We have people pouring in. They don't want security at the border. They don't want to stop drugs. And they want to take money away from our military, which we cannot do. So those are some of the statements. Your comments the other day made it harder. Did you see what various senators in the room said about my comments? They were made.
Right.
No, I'm not a racist. I am the least racist person you have ever interviewed. That I can tell you.
Yeah, so anyway, the senators Trump was referring to, did you see what those other senators in the room said? Those were senators, Republican senators, Tom Cotton and David Perdue. They were the ones saying Trump didn't say it, or he said shit house, not shit hole. They have now been outed as straight up lying. They didn't know what Trump said. Their story was, we don't remember what Trump said. We didn't hear what Trump said. We don't know what Trump said. And later, Cotton and Perdue came out and said, oh, Trump said shithouse countries, not shithole countries. This is sort of what you call a lie by omission, right? If the truth is that they didn't hear Trump say shithole because he said shithouse, you need to volunteer that up front. And remember, up front, what they said is, we didn't hear anything. We don't know what was said. And only later did they come out and say, oh, no, what he said was shithouse. So we were right when we said he didn't say shithole. We just initially forgot to mention that we actually knew exactly what he said. And it was this other word, which is different, but without any real distinction in terms of its meaning. That's like, did you kill this woman yesterday? And you say, no, I didn't, because it happened at 12:01 a.m., right? If you're trying to get out of a murder charge, you make the prosecution prove its case. If you're just trying to be an honorable and honest elected official, you don't just say, I didn't hear shithole, and then leave it at that. If you heard shithouse, you immediately say, it wasn't shithole, it was shithouse. And they didn't do that. Their initial story was, we don't know what he said.
And they really didn't have to get caught in the lie for us to know that it was a lie, because they were saying, I don't recall, or I didn't hear the president say that. I mean, anyone who understands that legalese knows what they're getting at.
It's possible that they literally didn't hear it because there were 5 conversations going on at once, right? Like, it's remotely possible. But yes, it was weird from the beginning. So headline 1 is Cotton and Perdue lied, and then Trump used those lies to smear Dick Durbin as a liar. But the bigger picture thing that people aren't talking about is that defending Trump by saying, oh, he said shithouse and not shithole, it's not a great defense, because basically it's the same thing, right? Like, for all we know, Trump is so stupid he was trying to say shithole, but he didn't even know that that's what you're supposed to say, and he said shithouse instead. But that's not really a defense. Like, the big exculpation of Trump is it wasn't shithole, it was shithouse. That doesn't really make any sense, right?
I was going to explain the distinction between the two things, but then I decided just better off not to.
Honestly, though, is there one? Like, it's the same message, right? Which is, he doesn't want people coming from countries that he doesn't consider to be countries we want people coming from, like Norway. Norway is the example of a good country, but he doesn't want people from shithole or shithouse countries. Okay. The takeaway is the country is being run by little kids, effectively. And I don't even get why they're trying to pretend anymore. If we're only debating over shithouse versus shithole, what is there even to debate, right? We know Trump is a liar. We know that his immediate staffers are liars. The only real question now is, why are these other Republicans lying for Trump? Like, why is it that Tom Cotton and David Perdue said, we are going to create a pretext that Trump can point to defend himself from comments that are truly disgusting and vile? It's their character now that is impugnable because of these lies.
Well, I think when it comes to Tom Cotton, he has his eyes set on becoming part of the administration.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, there was that double switch about Rex Tillerson leaving as the Secretary of State, and then they would put Mike Pompeo in
as Secretary
of State, and so that would create an opening at CIA director,
right?
And maybe Tom Cotton could take over there. So he has to suck up to Trump if he wants that position.
That is a really cynical and probably accurate assessment of what might be going on. Which Republicans at this point aren't lying for Trump? If we started a list, I mean, I guess James Comey got fired because he wasn't willing to lie for Trump. Well, he's a Republican.
Lindsey Graham fact-checked him in real time.
That's right. Lindsey Graham did a fact check. Robert Mueller is another Republican who so far isn't lying for Trump. On CNN, Anna Navarro is a Republican strategist. I've not heard her lying for Trump. Joe Scarborough has been a Republican, and he hasn't been lying for Trump, although he quit being a Republican, I believe. He went to be an independent now. There is a list of Republicans not willing to lie for Trump, but it's pretty small. If you glean nothing from this other than these people lied, what I want you to take away from it is vote them out. We can get rid of these people. The election is under 10 months away. I'm on Twitter at @DPacman. Show is on Twitter at David Pacman Show.
The David Pacman Show at davidpacman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Jeffrey Fuller. Jeffrey, thank you. This program is independently funded by members like Jeffrey Fuller. You can join him at davidpakman.com/membership. You can also get a lot of the same member benefits, including the bonus show and the commercial-free videos of the program, by going to patreon.com/davidpakmanshow. 2 ways to get access to lots of really, really great supporter benefits. All right, let's get into this week's Hatriot Mail. If you don't know what Hatriot Mail is, it is when a professional voiceover artist does dramatic interpretive readings of hate mail that I get. Here's a little more information about Hatriot Mail.
Because it's God's divine plan that every child be born, but an act of patriotic duty to snuff that bastard if he sets a foot near your stuff. Hatriot Mail. Written by patriots who hate David Pakman.
Yeah.
Because America. And because freedom.
All right, there are some, not red flags, but sort of calling cards. Hatriot Mail bingo. One of those is spelling your, the contraction for you are, as Y-O-U-R. Another is anti-Semitism. Another is homophobia. And on that list of Hatriot Mail bingo is also the word cuck. And that is in no short supply in this week's Hatriot Mail.
Pakman looks like a cuck, sounds like a cuck, acts like a cuck. Like Jared Kushner. Ivanka knows not to actually let that weak C take root. Her kids come from a different source. Red mixed with yellow. 2018 will be the year of it. Tagline.
Is the implication that because Jared Kushner, or as we know him, Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, is the implication that because he's Jewish, his seed is not as strong? Like there's some kind of, does this go back to like the weird Nazi experiments on Jews and sort of eugenics type stuff? I'm not even sure I get the reference.
So that like Ivanka wouldn't want that, so she'd go to another source to have her kids.
Yeah, apparently so. I don't even know if that's the interpretation. There.
Usually I can somewhat follow the Hatriot Mail.
Yeah.
But when I got to the last line of this one, I just didn't understand at all. Like 2018 will be the year of it. The year of what?
The year of the tagline.
Of what tagline?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. But you know what? I think there is something very, very true here. If it looks like a cuck and it sounds like a cuck, it's probably a cuck. And I think that's the most insightful analysis we've maybe ever had in Hatriot Mail. You can turn Hatriot Mail into something positive because the coupon code Hatriot40 will save you 40% off of your membership if you use that code when signing up for a membership at davidpakman.com/membership. And remember, looks like a cuck, sounds like a cuck.
Must be a cuck?
It's probably Alex Jones. I mean, it's probably a cuck. Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, let's get into Donald Trump's medical exam. I don't even know how to reset the story at this point because every day it's become even more and more insane. But I guess like to go really far back, Donald Trump has been behaving oddly for a year, and increasingly people have been questioning his cognitive stability, his mental health, whether he might be experiencing the early symptoms and signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. And so Donald Trump, in order to push back against this, decided to have a medical exam last Friday. Dr. Ronny Jackson conducted the exam. The exam was really mostly a physical exam, but the idea was to be able to say, Trump is fine mentally, and why not physically as well, right? If you can say that he's just the best president, the most healthy president ever, why not say it? So Dr. Ronny Jackson conducted the test. He has now spoken, and he says that Donald Trump received a perfect score, 30 out of 30, on his cognitive exam. And I'll tell you more about why it's out of 30. That tells us which test it is. Why was a cognitive exam done? Because Donald Trump asked for it. Here's a quote from Dr. Ronny Jackson. I've got to know him pretty well, and I have absolutely no concerns about his cognitive ability or his neurological function. I've found no reason whatsoever to think the president has any issues whatsoever with his thought processes. Here's the problem. Jackson gave Trump the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. A common type of dementia is frontotemporal, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, dementia. The mini mental exam or the Montreal Cognitive Assessment that Trump was given, it doesn't screen for that. The Montreal test is a 10-minute test on a 30-point scale. It tests short-term memory recall. You are given 5 nouns, like if I say television, microphone, 5 nouns, and then 5 minutes later, you have to repeat those. Not exactly a very rigorous test for seeing whether there's cognitive decline, right? You have to draw a clock, an analog clock, showing a particular time of day, and then you have to copy a drawing of a 3-dimensional cube. You can be experiencing cognitive decline, where we might say you shouldn't be president, and still be able to copy a cube off of a piece of paper, right? In the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, you also do a short exercise where you alternate between a trail-making task and a sound awareness task and a 2-item verbal abstraction task. The point is, these are pretty simple tests. There's an attention test where you have to look at digits forward and backwards and then focus on a tapping. You're then asked to repeat 2 sentences immediately after hearing them. And then this is just stunning. A lot of people have heard this and they say Trump's just, he's bigly cognitively with it. You get 6 of the 30 points just for naming the city and state where the test is being conducted. Like if Trump just said, it's January 12th, 2018, and I'm currently in Washington, D.C., that's 20% of the score, right? So the point is, this test for one specific type of very significant cognitive decline, and it's not the kind that appears to be happening in Trump, right? Because the symptoms of the type of dementia that is speculated to maybe be happening in Trump, and maybe it's not, right? But we need to be thorough and figure out, what did this test prove or disprove? Poor judgment, loss of empathy, socially inappropriate behavior, repetitive compulsive behavior, frequent abrupt mood changes and speech difficulties. None of that is tested by drawing a cube and repeating 5 nouns, right? None of that is even, we can't deduce anything about that from the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. Now, if the argument is Trump's fine, that's actually scary, because it means Trump's acting the way he's been acting for some reason other than dementia, like he's genuinely a moron or he has significant personality disorders. It's almost better if Trump has been acting the way he's been acting as president because he has dementia. But if not, it's actually nothing that we can determine from this test, because the Montreal Cognitive Assessment doesn't test for what Trump is speculated to have.
The thing is, we're not going to get another test.
No.
And this was the White House physician. He was
That's
Obama's doctor, too, while Obama was in office.
Yep.
And I tend to trust the results. I mean, there were some things that the physician said that seemed a little bit hacky to me, right? Like he said, oh, the president is so sharp and articulate. It looked a little bit over the top to me.
It seemed like Harold Bornstein language.
But what other evidence are we going to find, you know?
That's the problem, which is that most people won't ever even understand how limited the 10-minute Montreal Cognitive Assessment is. And to be clear, I am not saying Trump definitively does or doesn't have frontotemporal dementia. What I'm telling you is the Montreal Cognitive Assessment wouldn't tell us one way or the other. And that's just not being reported on, period. Now, as a total aside, I also want to talk about the physical stuff, because it seems completely bogus what has been reported. It's been reported that, first of all, number one, Donald Trump's height and weight seem completely inaccurate on this. It says that Trump is 6'3" and weighs 239 pounds, which puts him, coincidentally, just below being obese, okay? First of all, Trump publicly is known to be 6'2". I mean, I get, it's a 1-inch difference, right? 6'2" and 6'3". But when you're cutting it so close in terms of weight, it is possibly the difference between being obese and just being significantly overweight. But does anyone believe Trump weighs 239? If you see a picture of Trump at 6'3" or 6'2" and you see his physical body, how can anyone really think the guy weighs 239 pounds? I'm not buying it.
And this is sparking the girther movement?
The girther
Have you heard
movement.
about
that? I have, yeah. I love it. That's a great term. Do you believe Trump is 6'3", 239?
I think he may slouch, right? I mean, maybe his posture is just poor. So when he stands up straight, he could stand at 6'3".
So 6'3", you believe?
239 seems pretty low to me. And also, apparently he has a resting heart rate of 68. If you have a diet exclusively of McDonald's and KFC, how do you have a resting heart rate of 68?
Particularly when Trump's cholesterol has worsened, he doesn't exercise, he takes medication. That medication is going to be increased. The bad cholesterol has gone up significantly since the last test. I just don't know how it computes that even believing 6'3", 239, which I don't, I think it's more like 6'2", 259, but that's maybe a story for a different day. a guy who's 71, doesn't exercise, eats a terrible diet, and has increased cholesterol, and as Dr. Sanjay Gupta said earlier today, evidence of heart disease. How is that excellent health? Like, I just don't get it. And I know most 71-year-olds have some degree of elevated cholesterol, half of them or so. But to say that this is a man in excellent health just sounds a little weird to me.
And his doctor said that he wants to put him on a diet, maybe lose 10 to 15 pounds over the course of the next year.
Good luck.
But Trump's not open to exercise, of course, because that would drain his battery, right?
Yes,
Deplete his resources.
what Pat's referring to is Trump once said that he believes, I want to try to represent it as he said it.
Okay.
He believes humans are born with some total amount of energy that is available to them throughout their entire lives, and that amount of energy depletes over time, and that activities like exercise make it deplete more quickly, so that exercise presumably is to be avoided. Is that more or less the story?
That's it, yeah. Better said, but that's it.
Yeah, I think I'm almost saying it more articulately than Trump did. So listen, I don't know that this is going to go any further, but what is abundantly clear is that, let me put it a different way. We now know that President Ronald Reagan was already suffering from Alzheimer's during his presidency. He probably would have passed the Montreal Cognitive Assessment because it is so simple, basic, and quick that I don't think it tells us anything of value. Discuss this with us on our subreddit at davidpakman.com/REDDIT.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I've got some great follow-up on this story about U.S. Ambassador to the Netherlands, Pete Hoekstra, or Hoekstra, some people told me after last week's story, is the way that his last name's pronounced. He has finally admitted that his claims about the no-go zones in the Netherlands weren't true. This started to get attention when a couple of weeks ago, Pete Hoekstra told a Dutch reporter during an interview that claims that he said there are no-go zones and the burning of politicians in the Netherlands were fake news. And then minutes later, he denied ever having called it fake news. It was bizarre, right? So to start this out, this is what started the entire controversy back in December.
Speaking of threat, at one point you mentioned in a debate that there are no-go zones in the Netherlands and that cars and politicians are being set on fire.
I didn't say that. That is actually an incorrect statement. Yeah, we would call it fake news.
Is that
I
fake
never
news?
said that.
Because it's what
but
you
but
literally said.
No, it's not what I said.
The Islamic movement has now gotten to a point where they have put Europe into chaos. Chaos in the Netherlands. There are cars being burned. There are politicians that are being burned. And yes, there are no-go zones in the Netherlands.
You call it fake news, obviously.
I didn't call that fake news. I didn't use the word this today.
No?
No. I don't think I did.
Okay, I think.
So this is already completely outrageous, right? So then at a press conference in January, this year, last week, Dutch reporters followed up. They did the right thing. They asked him, are you going to retract what you said about the fake news? I'm sorry, about the no-go zones and the burning of politicians, or are you going to provide examples of it? And he looked like a stunned puppy. Here's a reminder of what that went like.
Are politicians being burned in the Netherlands in the past? Is that something you believe, yes or no?
I'm not revisiting the issue.
Yes, did you read the quote over the fireplace from John Adams?
If you're truly an honest and wise man, would you please take back the remark about burned politicians? Or name the politician that was burned in the Netherlands?
Yes. Thank you.
Why don't you answer the question? Answer the question. This is not how this works, guys. Come on.
This is the Netherlands. You have to answer questions.
And then with a little bit of overlap with that last clip, here is how it continued, and it was not good.
Why don't you answer the question? Answer the question.
Mr. Ambassador, can you mention any example of a Dutch politician who is burned recent years?
We go to Bonnie.
Good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning.
This is not how this works, guys. Come on.
This is the Netherlands. You have to answer questions.
Please.
This is not how it works.
He's answering the questions.
No, you didn't answer mine.
Yeah.
Or ill-coached.
Didn't answer his question, didn't answer his question.
If we don't have any further questions, then we can.
We do.
So he has finally admitted that it wasn't true. On Friday, Hoekstra said to a Dutch newspaper called De Telegraaf that he was shocked by his own comments and that they are wrong. Quote, "That was a wrong statement. That was just wrong. That one shocked me personally because while you know there have been other issues in other countries in Europe, you know that has never been the circumstances here." I am seriously confused about this. He said he was shocked by his own prior statements. Like he was so wrong about what he said that he shocked even himself.
Wow.
And if he was shocked that he said it, I'd want to know why. Like, did he say it for political gain, knowing it was a lie? Did he believe it at the time, but he was really confused? How do you explain being shocked by your own lies? And now I know I've been talking about this a lot lately because of Trump, but is it possible Pete Hoekstra has dementia? And I only ask this because in the interview that he gave last month, he called the reference to his claims fake news. And then like moments later in the same interview, he said, "I never said that. I never called it fake news." What explanation is there for that? Like this guy either is having some kind of cognitive issue or he's just a terribly bad liar. And I commend the Dutch press here, right? We have to commend the Dutch press.
I think he is apologizing and expressing some remorse. And now he's trying to distance himself from what he said.
By
and
saying
that's,
he's
that's
shocked
how he's
by it.
doing it. It's by saying that he was shocked by what he said before.
I found my own comments shocking, and they're certainly not true. Good for the Dutch press, right? They didn't let this guy off the hook during the press conferences. They stayed on him for close to a month now, and eventually he admitted it. He was flat out wrong, and American reporters should do this. I've said before, when Sarah Huckabee Sanders starts to filibuster and she won't answer the questions, and she just moves on to the next reporter has to say, they need a pact in the White House press room. Hold on, Sarah. You didn't answer my colleague's question. And even if they're from a different news outlet and you want to get your question in, have some kind of pact and solidarity where you're not going to allow what Sarah Huckabee Sanders is allowed to do to happen, and take this as a guide for that. I think it's excellent.
Well, I do wonder if you employed this strategy on Sarah Huckabee Sanders or on Donald Trump.
She'd walk away.
Would they back off of those comments? Eventually, could it take them a week before they decided to retract their statement? Or would
Here's
they
how
just
it would
double
go.
down?
More than likely, until you completely reset the expectations in the short term, if one day the White House press corps decides to do this to Sarah Huckabee Sanders when she won't answer a question, initially, if she just keeps getting the same question, she'll leave. She'll say, "Okay, guys, that's it. We're done here." And she'll frame it as the press corps was being childish and the press corps was being rude by repeatedly asking the same question. Over the long term, one of two things would happen. Either this would become expected from the White House press corps and the White House would have to start at least making an attempt to appear to answer questions, or they would just stop doing the briefings. And remember with Sean Spicer, when Sean Spicer was White House press secretary before Sarah Huckabee Sanders replaced him, there was a period in there where he said, "I'm going to start holding the briefings off camera or in my office with only audio recording, and I'm going to limit who's even allowed to come in, because if you're just going to be writing lies, what he considered to be lies, you're not going to be allowed to participate." They will just start punishing people by refusing them access, which I believe, if there was total solidarity among the press corps, they wouldn't really be able to do.
Yeah, or that any story, any questions pertaining to the Russia investigation would be referred to Trump's special counsel.
Sure.
Or that the president's already spoken extensively about a certain topic. They do have outs.
They have outs.
Yeah.
And they would attempt to use them desperately, but at least make them do that, right? Put them on the defensive. Let's talk about the upcoming critical thinking series. Should I tell the story from the beginning? Because some people may not know.
We need a refresher.
What's even going on? By the way, Pat has no idea what I'm talking about, so I'll tell it just for his benefit at least. So Pat, here's what's going on.
Okay.
We're working on a critical thinking mini-series. I have talked about for years that the teaching of critical thinking is very much lacking in the United States. It should really be taught by sort of convention at the latest in high school, if not in junior high, I believe. And at my class in the communication department at Boston College that I taught last fall, I did a lot on critical thinking as related specifically to media literacy and epistemology. But what we're putting together is a 12 to 15 part miniseries. Pat's taking notes now, so now he's going to remember the story on this. A 12 to 15 part miniseries on critical thinking, which will include and cover such issues as how to construct arguments, identifying good and bad arguments, the validity and soundness of arguments, identifying and examples of logical fallacies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This initially was going to be funded through Patreon because we already produce a daily show, right? So the idea was we want to grow our Patreon following, which you can read about at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. You'll see we currently have 1,983 patrons. Initially, we were shooting for 2,250 patrons, at which point we would produce and publish this critical thinking miniseries. We have since secured 2 sponsors for the critical thinking miniseries. So you will notice now, if you go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, that the critical thinking miniseries goal has been reduced to 2,100 patrons because since we now have the series subsidized by these advertisers, we only need to get to 2,100 patrons. We are at 1,983, right, as of right now, meaning we are 117 patrons away from 2,100. And we played last week for you an example clip on validity and soundness. I've also shown you that we have visually, this is going to be arguably the best thing we've ever done. I've shown you the introduction to the different parts that producer Noah Ferguson has put together. So this is really coming together nicely, but we need 117 more patrons. And my goal is that we could get this done within the next 3 to 5 weeks. That's my goal. 117 patrons really isn't that much, right? I mean, that's only like 20 new patrons a week and then we can do it. So people, please go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show. It doesn't matter how much you contribute. This is totally democratic in that $1,000 pledge and a $1 pledge both count as one pledge. And we are trying to get 117 more pledges. And I think from what you've seen, are you as bullish about this as I am, that this is going to be fantastic?
I mean, I'm still developing a sense of what's going on here, but I'll have to watch the video clip over a few times.
A few times to figure it out, yeah.
I think I'm excited for this.
Tomorrow, Pat is going to prepare for us an academic-style sort of presentation on his understanding of the critical thinking miniseries, and then we'll have like a 10 or 12 question quiz.
And maybe that will be released when we hit 2,200 patrons?
Yes, that's right. When we hit 2,200 patrons, Pat's book report on the critical thinking miniseries is going to go live. So anyway, please make your contributions, patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Think of this as a real public service, because I think not only would this be enjoyable for people who are in our core audience, who maybe already understand the importance of critical thinking, but putting this out there in the ether, in the world, I think will also be a really great thing. And more critical thinking is good.
Yeah, if people are having a conversation and they hear about, I don't know, the difference between validity and so if something's correct, they may want to look that up, or a certain logical fallacy. If they hear about the straw man in conversation, got to find that on YouTube, right?
It will be very useful during those Thanksgiving, or I guess what holidays are upcoming? Passover and Easter are upcoming. During those discussions where your crazy uncle starts making wildly fallacious political claims, you will be armed with an epistemological structure with which you can call into question their beliefs. And there's nothing that says holidays and heartwarming family time together than making the conservative people that go to your holiday events look and feel as though they know absolutely nothing about what's going on in the world. That's really what the holiday spirit is about for me. Yeah, no doubt about it. That and vegan turkey, but I'm speaking for Pat on that. Okay, let's take a break. We have a lot more coming up for you on today's program.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So we all know about Make America Great Again. That's been a political slogan of President Donald Trump. But there's this other slogan that is increasingly being used by the president. It's America First. And America First is a very, very different thing than Make America Great Again. And we talked about this just a little bit around the time of Donald Trump's inauguration. America First has a really dark past connected to Nazism and to white supremacy and to the KKK. And recently, Trump's been using America First as a slogan more and more rather than the fabled Make America Great Again. Here's one tweet from Donald Trump from just a couple of days ago where he said, "I, as president, want people coming into our country capitalized, why, we don't know, who are going to help us become strong and great again. People coming in through a system based on merit. No more lotteries," lotteries also capitalized, hashtag America First. As bad as America First in this tweet is the regularly atrocious grammar and sentence structure of Trump's tweets, but that's not the point of this story. That's nothing new. America First this is not something Trump even comes close to having developed on his own, right? It has a very long history. And there was something called the America First Committee, which was formed, I believe, in 1940, early in the 40s. And it was anti-Semitic. It was pro-fascist. It was a pressure group that didn't want the United States getting involved in World War II, partially because they didn't believe that preventing genocide against Jews was a worthy cause that justified getting involved in a military conflict. And some of the characters surrounding this movement are people we're aware of, right? For example, known anti-Semite Charles Lindbergh. He became a huge advocate for the America First mentality. And this became a calling card slogan of the KKK. We've got a couple of images, in fact, that we're showing our television audience. You've got a KKK rally with a cross burning in the background and one sign that says America for Whites and another sign being held that says America First. Also, another picture from some bigger march with a big KKK sign saying America First, one God, one country, one flag. And two of the people that eventually became sort of higher-ups in this America First movement previously tried to stop Jews from representing the United States in the 1936 Olympics. This has such a political history that it even at one point became a topic for Dr. Seuss, who had a cartoon. Actually, he had 4 or 5 at minimum cartoons related to America First, but we have one single frame comic cartoon up on the screen for our television audience. So Donald Trump is increasingly using and tweeting a dog whistle that we know is connected to both white supremacists and anti-Semites, and that has been around for nearly a century at this point. But David, Trump's son-in-law is Jewish, and Trump's daughter Ivanka, by conversion, is Jewish. So how could Trump be anti-Semitic? This is not about Donald Trump's beliefs. For all we know, I'm not saying that this is definitely likely, but it's possible that Donald Trump doesn't even really know the meaning or the history of the phrase, but he's using it for one reason or another, and he's rallying and coalescing white supremacists. This is code to white supremacists that Trump is their guy. It emboldens them, as we've seen them emboldened for the last year, and add this to the recent talking point about more European and Norwegian immigrants and fewer immigrants from shithole countries or shithouse countries. We don't even know at this point which word it was. Whatever it is that Trump thinks he's doing, this is appealing to white supremacists and racists. And remember that term, I forget if it's from The Simpsons, where it was like a fake slogan for Fox News, not racist, but number one with racists, or something like that. It ultimately doesn't matter whether Trump knows the history of the America First Committee, and that's why he's saying this, or whether he likes the sound of it, or whether one of his advisors has put the idea of saying this into his head. It is a dog whistle to these groups, no matter what is in Trump's head when he uses it.
Well, I don't think most Trump supporters are racist, or most people who use this slogan are racist. I think they may just not understand the history behind the term.
Okay. I mean, I think that, but let's say that that's true. At minimum, it is definitely still an appeal to the sort of most jingoistic and destructively, I guess they would call it, patriotic elements of society.
I think that they would argue that the term has been co-opted, so now that it means something that's anti-globalist, anti-UN, anti-foreign aid, right?
It's the new meaning. By using it under Trump, they have taken the term back from the white supremacists and the KKK or whatever. Yeah, maybe that's what they would say. I don't know. But increasingly, Donald Trump is using that phrase, and it's really important for you to know the origins of it. There's explosive new allegations from adult movie actress Stormy Daniels, who says that she had a year-long affair with the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. Her legal name is Stephanie Clifford. She claims she went to Trump's hotel room after meeting him at a golf tournament about 12 years ago, and that they had a sexual relationship for about a year, including meeting Trump all over the country. She doesn't allege any abuse. She says she is not a victim here, other than Trump just didn't fulfill some promises to her. According to Stormy Daniels, Trump promised to buy her a condo in Florida. Trump promised her that he could make her a contestant on some season of The Apprentice. But that's as far as the complaints from Stormy Daniels go, in addition to her claims that Donald Trump is not sexually skilled. That doesn't really come as a surprise to anybody, I don't think. So why do we care about this? Well, we care about it because, number one, she says that Donald Trump paid her, or at least promised to pay her, $130,000 for her silence. Daniels claims that through representatives of Trump, she and Trump worked out an agreement where Trump would pay her six figures, reportedly $130,000, and she wouldn't say anything about the relationship that she had with Donald Trump. And Slate reporters reviewed the agreement which Daniels provided to them. It is exactly as she described, but the one element of it that is complex is that it refers to both Daniels and Trump allegedly under pseudonyms to maintain privacy, even though it does name Trump's attorney and her attorney in the agreement. So why has she decided to talk about it now rather than during the run-up to the election? Because that would have been the better time to mention something like this. And it's because during the run-up to the election, she was working on that confidentiality agreement and the payout, and that still has not been finalized, according to Stormy Daniels. And she thinks now that it is just something that they are going to stall indefinitely on. And in addition to that, it's back in the news because the Wall Street Journal is reporting that that $130,000 payment was arranged by the now infamous Trump lawyer of Russia dossier fame, Michael Cohen. White House obviously is saying that this isn't true. Trump lawyer Michael Cohen also put out a letter, supposedly from Stormy Daniels, where she says, "I never had an affair with Donald Trump." As soon as I read that letter, I started laughing because you've got a letter. So let's take a step back. Supposedly this didn't happen. It's been untrue for the entire decade that rumors have been swirling about it. Cohen denies that they paid Stormy Daniels not to talk about it. And by the way, he happens to have a letter lying around where she wrote to him saying, "I never had an affair with Donald Trump," because it's super normal for people to send letters saying, "I've never had an affair with your client," unprovoked, right?
Yeah, and there are so many layers to this story that we're not even talking about the infidelity, right? 12 years ago, Trump was married. Now, we don't know the terms of their relationship. Maybe it's an open relationship and this sort of thing's okay.
Yeah.
But you'd think among Republican voters, this would disturb them a little bit.
Oh, no, but they only believe in the moral high ground. In theory, they don't actually care about it. As long as they're not voting for Hillary Clinton, it doesn't matter what Donald Trump did. That's what you have to remember.
And I guess if they can explain away 12-plus sexual misconduct allegations made against Trump,
one affair is not going to be a big deal.
Affair too.
The other weird thing about the letter is that Stormy Daniels signed it Stormy Daniels as opposed to Stephanie Clifford, which is her legal name. Make of that what you will, right? I don't know why she would write that letter and sign it with her porn name. That's sort of weird. And as Pat is pointing out, the one sentence bottom line on this is that the president allegedly had an affair with a porn star while he was married, and possibly even while Melania Trump was pregnant, if you look at the timing of this. And it's not even the fifth biggest story of the week, and it's not even the biggest news story today, right? The president's alleged one-year affair with a porn star is the last story on today's show. Yeah. And that's the indicative of what's going on here.
We almost put it after the voicemail.
Right. I almost had to find an even less prioritized spot on the program than the last story of the day. We'll see if we have ever learned more about it. And on that note, I don't even have time for the voicemail today. We'll get to it tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.